evening and thank you for joining us on our news desk. You are watching News Report and my name is SALIFYANJI. We would like to apologize for the break-in transmission that was due to a technical failure. We'll just go through the leading stories for this evening before we go into the details of the story. So government will escalate enforcement of COVID-19 measures, and Ndola residents enroach on cemeteries. U.S. police facial recognition systems misidentify black people. To get into the details of the news, we go to our first story, and government will deploy law enforcement officers in public places to enforce public health measures on the coronavirus pandemic. Given a coronavirus pandemic update in Lusaka today, Health Minister Dr. Chilufya said the directive to deploy police officers came from President Lungu during today's cabinet meeting. So during this morning's cabinet meeting, President Edgar Lungu addressed cabinet and took note of the COVID-19 situation in the country and directed the cabinet minister to immediately escalate response, in line with the increase in the pandemic as well. And so right now, the cumulative number stands at 8,210, and with recoveries of about 6,802, with 241 deaths and active cases standing at 1,167. We take a look at this clip.
We need to ensure public health measures are in place. These involve masking. These are provided for in the law, in the Public Health Act and in the statutory instruments. And to ensure that we protect you, escalation in enforcement, strengthening of enforcement of measures through proactivity through the Minister of Home Affairs and the Minister of Local Government will be seen. We urge compliance. Measures are known. Implementation is key. This is the reason that His Excellency through Cabinet has directed enhanced enforcement. The cost of inaction is grave. If we don't act now, we'll see continued spread of COVID-19. If we don't act now, we'll continue seeing suffering of the people. If we don't act now, we'll continue seeing our economy contracting because activity will reduce because of COVID-19. So it is important that we act and act now, and we'll see over a period of time, 2 months, with masking up and other public health measures, that we'll be getting back to normal. So let us act now in order to return to normalcy.
To start with, ububulwele mwe bantu aleko bwaba, and it's real. Neolela ndapano, na defend telepo for 4 hours. My wife, Madam wanted to have a witness one day. From there, okufuma palia, umwela wale perera, until febanda senyeleti, eronalela lako. So, my message is to the people, especially mama markets. Ndachitanga nalolesha pa TV, I cry. Ndalila fesana. Nobody will understand unless walu aluvuvulwele. Elo mukachita understand. But ngatuambo start taking ama politics muli uvuvulwele. I'm telling you, we won't go anywhere. Uvuvulwele ekovuli. Ngachaka ya fiatama politics tuwavika aside, we can tituwaruisho uvuvulele tuwapu. Nomba ngatutangisha ma politics, uvuvulele tabuwakapwe.
So that was a press briefing held today on the COVID-19 update, and there you could see the the Minister of Health, Dr. Chilufya, emphasizing on the need to enforce police officers, or rather the directive from the president, to enforce police officers, on people, on following guidelines that are supposed to be followed as regards to curbing or preventing the further spread of the COVID-19. And also that is we also saw an ex-patient narrating his story about how everything went from the time that he discovered that he had COVID-19 and to his recovery side as well. And so in our next story, a video of Patrick Front PF Secretary General Davis Mwila has made rounds, and after after it has alleged that he claimed that civil servants should be appointed from the PF party structures, as those who have worked hard for the party should also benefit. We take a look at this clip.
The issue of appointments. But Chairman, we have to appoint people from the structures. When it comes to Budisi, let's not bring people from outside. If whatever she's coming from the structure, we will need more. And that's the only way we are going to motivate our people. Very, very important. Very, very, very important. People must know that for them to be appointed, they have to work for this party. Yes. That we should not entertain that. We need to identify people who have suffered for this party, and we need to reward them. We appoint them, and they will appreciate and they will look after their friends well. Office, kuno yo ine civil servant. Politics, mwafuma kuma party. You cannot abandon the party now. Balala ngababa bachita point balala. Atuwafumine ku party. Ama cooperatives, you have to ensure that cooperatives are formed. They fall under the community development and social welfare. That is your job. And ensure you coordinate with the provincial chairman, you bring Valuo, let them empower the women. Here you
That is Mr. Davis Mwila, the PFSG, narrating or stating that civil servants should be appointed from the PF party. We know that civil servants are supposed to be non-partisan. They're not supposed to belong to any political party, but they, in as much as they really have the right to vote as well, I don't think this statement by the PFSG really will benefit anyone. I don't really think we have to get to a point where, it has to be, someone from, a ruling political party that should get, favor or be employed under the government as well. I think the law should really be fair and applied, the same way from every point as well. And into Ndola, 4 cemeteries in Ndola have been enriched on posing public health hazards, as some of them have sunk boreholes in the land. Ndola City Council Acting Director of Public Health, Hubert Mwanza, cited Kawama, Mitengo, Katolomba, and Kansenshi as the 4 cemeteries that have been enriched by various land developers. Mr. Mwanza said the council is worried over the rise in illegal land developers in cemeteries, saying that the council will demolish the structures as soon as possible. And we go right into our international story for the day. It has been more than 2 months since the killing of George Floyd at the hands of police in the United States. And as protests continue, the message is no longer just about specific incidents of violence, but about the demonstrators saying, the system is rather of racism, that has been put in place. So one of the most obvious examples is that the widespread use of facial recognition systems have been proven to misidentify people of color. Al Jazeera's Shihab Ratansi reports.
When Black Lives Matter activists take to the streets, they're clear. They're not protesting against a few bad apples in police departments, but a system of policing that, wittingly or unwittingly, targets people of color and they say needs to be completely overhauled. The widespread use of facial recognition software by police forces, apparently unconcerned by the technology's inaccuracy, is a clear example of this. Robert Williams was interrogated, having been arrested and taken into custody by Detroit police the day before, and it soon became clear he had been misidentified.
I look, I said, no, that's not me. He turns another paper over, he said, I guess that's not you either. I picked that paper up and hold it next to my face. And I said, this is not me. I was like, I hope y'all don't think all black people look alike. And then he says, the computer says it's you.
Study after study, including a federal government report last year, has shown facial recognition software misidentifies Black, Native American and Asian faces 10 to 100 times more often than white faces.
They understand that this technology is 10 to 100 times worse at identifying people of color, yet they are still using it. The chief said recently, in fact, that it gets it wrong 96% of the time. And there's also the fact that they were using this technology for over a year and a half without any guidelines or any public knowledge about its implementation.
Because the officers who interrogated Williams mentioned a computer had identified him, we know inaccurate facial recognition software and careless police work were to blame for his arrest. But there are no nationwide records about how often people are wrongly arrested as a result of recognition software, even though, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, the software has been used hundreds of thousands of times by the FBI, for example. We do know from the Detroit Police Force's records that this software, proven to be unreliable in identifying African Americans, is overwhelmingly used on African Americans. Facial recognition software has been used 70 times as of June 22nd by the department. In 68 of those cases, the photo was of a Black person taken from social media or security cameras.
Hey, Julia. Julia, do you know why Daddy got arrested?
Because they looked that up on the computer.
To have my girls out there and seeing that was, their first interaction with the police, and for that to be what it was, to them taking their dad, we're always going to wonder now, how much did this affect them?
Civil liberties groups are calling for bans at the federal and local level of the use of such software.
In the city of Detroit, that is over 80% Black and that has recently emerged from bankruptcy. There's no justifiable reason that you should still be investing in this sort of flawed technology when you could put that money to better use, positively impacting people's lives in their neighborhoods.
The police's use of technology that has been proven to misidentify Black people is just another example of why so many have mobilized not to reform the police, but to restructure policing entirely, even when there are multiple empirical studies proving race discrimination in software that is routinely used. Some police departments are still reluctant to change. Shia Bratansi, Al Jazeera.
I've always thought when it comes to technology, it could be beneficial and it could be, something that would really cause a lot of tension and havoc as well. And in this case, a very, very unfair, application of the law as well. Imagine being, mistaken for somebody else. And so this is a case of, could be a case of mistaken identity as well. And that's one thing, that we do not really, or no one ever wants to have to incur. And that story brings us to the end of today's episode of the News Report. We just go through the leading stories that made headlines today. Government to escalate enforcement of COVID-19 measures. Dollar residents enroach on cemeteries, and U.S. police facial recognition systems misidentify Black people. That's all we had for you on today's segment. Join us again tomorrow at 19 hours. This has been SALIFYANJI saying good night and God bless.